So real quick before we start this video, this is somewhat of a part 2 video, but if you haven't seen the first part, don't worry about it. I'm going to repeat myself a little bit from that first video. Basically what happened with that one is I posted it with just all information you can find online, readily available, but I've been talking to some ex-POORSTACY fans, gave me a lot more information, so you can check that one out if you want, but I'm going to try to make this the definitive video on POORSTACY's career, lots more details, so if you watch that first one, there's tons here for you to watch, even though some stuff's going to be repeated, but there's going to be more detail on it. If you haven't seen that one, you're going to understand this too. So without further ado, let's get into it. What does a true fall from grace look like as an artist these days? It seems that so many musicians we know and idolize in the internet rap circuit are either liars, drug addicts, woman beaters, or sometimes all three. Despite that, their careers never seem to be affected. Sometimes they even refuse to acknowledge they did anything wrong at all, or even play into it, yet they remain ingrained in our culture, even held in high regard, and they're never punished for their sins. But what happens when you don't reach the level of fame that insulates you against all criticism? What if you had an inspiring career, many connections, and everything going right for you, but you threw it all away just to sin again? What would happen to an artist like that? Would they implode right in front of our eyes? Could an artist like that be redeemed? And even if they are deemed irredeemable, could an artist like that provide more value as a life lesson than their actual music could provide? What depths can an artist sink down to when the eyes of the public is trained on them? Well, we'll find that out when we once again dive into the story of POORSTACY. Just before this video starts, I do want to take a minute to mention that a lot of the information in this video did actually happen. Another researcher and I have taken the time to look very deeply into this story and try to get all the information correct. And yes, some of it does come down to relationship drama, and I know that nobody wants to take a side right now since it's still a progressing situation, but all this video is for is just to give you the information about this person. I'm not trying to convict him. I'm not saying my word is law. It's only to tell you the research that I've looked into, and if you have some proof against something I say in this video, then by all means feel free to leave it in the comments below and we can talk about it. Anyways, without further ado, let's look at the story of POORSTACY. So let's rewind a little. It's 2019 and Juice WRLD is still rising through the ranks of the rap game with his songs Lucid Dreams and Robbery. Lil Tecca is blowing up with his song Ransom. X's death is still sending shockwaves through the entire rap community, but not before putting out 2 full albums including Fuck Love featuring Trippie Redd. All of these songs feature one common thread: internet money. When researching my first POORSTACY video, I actually had no idea how big internet money is. They have a massive roster of in-house producers and they honestly control a lot in the rap game. Their influence can't be understated, and at the time they were looking for a budding new talent to take under their wing. The mastermind behind all of this is Taz Taylor. He realized that he could actually cut the middleman out and simply produce beats for existing artists by signing them on his own label and hooking them up with the existing clout hype machine that he'd been cooking up for a while. So who would be the next artist to be hyped by the Internet Money Collective and given a shot at the next level of fame? Taz would turn his eyes to Florida, as many other big artists on his roster had actually come from there. He would set his gaze on one upcoming artist known as Lito Zantana. Lito was short for Carlito Milford Jr., a young artist who had been interested in rock and metalcore music in Palm Beach since the age of 13. He was first inspired to get into music by his father, who would expose him to many different types of musical sounds and also train him in different musical instruments as well. He would begin making his own music in 2016, dropping his tracks on SoundCloud. From an outsider perspective, it looked like Lito had a pretty normal life. His parents were supportive of his craft and everything seemed to be good with him, but if you look a little deeper, you'll find some dark truth behind all that. Turns out that Carlito's dad was actually charged with child abuse when he was only 6 years old, and while we don't know many details about this case and it was later pled down from a felony to a misdemeanor, a couple context clues, we could probably summarize that his childhood wasn't the best. Lito was actually born in New York, where he spent about 10 years of his life living in Brooklyn. Eventually though, his family was priced out of the area, so they moved to Florida instead, where he still lives to this day. As a kid, he was pretty defiant. He wouldn't listen to anything his parents said and was always getting into trouble. Eventually his mother would fall ill, and with his father always involved in criminal activities, their finances would start to run out. This would lead Carlito to act out, landing him in juvenile detention centers multiple times throughout his childhood. It was clear he wasn't getting a lot of attention at home, so he would often get himself in violent fights or try to hurt himself just to get noticed by the adults around him. These violent tendencies would follow him throughout the rest of his life. Things didn't get any easier for him in his teenage years. He actually would drop out of high school in 9th grade, instead turning to petty crime and robberies to try to get money. At the age of 16, he mistakenly took some LSD that he thought was real, but it turned out that it actually was spiked with another drug, and he experienced psychosis for the first time in his life. This drug trip would last for 3 whole days. He described the entire experience as feeling like he was possessed. depressed, and after that he'd be left with OCD for the rest of his life. That's pretty well all we know about his childhood, besides things that Stacey himself mentioned in his music, like almost being aborted and having a really rough time as a kid. Now we fast forward a little bit to the point where Carlito was managing to gain a little bit of buzz on SoundCloud. He would drop a project called A Cure for Anxiety, and that would eventually catch Taz Taylor's attention. He was offered a deal, a label to sign with, and management for his entire career. All he had to do was sign, and they would do everything for him. This was the deal of a lifetime. Internet Money had helped people like Juice WRLD and X boost their careers to the next level. All that Lito had to do was just stay in line, and he could be as big as them in a couple of years. He would rename himself as POORSTACY, deleting all the tracks he made under Lito's Zantana, except for A Cure for Anxiety, that he would actually rework into his first EP. Internet Money would redo all the instrumentals for the old songs, as well as creating new ones for him. New EP would be called I Don't Care, and it would include a track produced by Nick Mira called Make Up. And that was all it took to get the POORSTACY name out there. An artist who was virtually unknown before this was suddenly cemented as the new upcoming face in SoundCloud rap. Over its entire lifetime, Make Up would actually go on to reach 5.3 million plays. Stacey wasn't the only one blowing up around this time, as Internet Money had actually signed another artist on known as Iann Door. Iann was also blowing up off a song he had created called Emotions, and the two of them would become quick friends. Seems like Internet Money had an interest in pairing these two up as a duo. Two of them would head off to LA in hopes of gaining more connections and creating more music with bigger producers. Seems like not everything was good behind the scenes though, as Iann Door would continue to grow, and POORSTACY seemed like he was getting left behind. Although they initially started as a rap duo, it seems like Iann Door was growing to become the main rapper, and POORSTACY was becoming more of a sidekick. POORSTACY would continue to work on his debut album Broken Kids Club that would later be renamed to The Breakfast Club. Unfortunately, this project was delayed time and time again. While Iann Door was still growing in the rap game and had released an EP and an album, POORSTACY still hadn't released anything under his name besides that one EP he dropped before he even moved to LA. It seems like Internet Money was more interested in turning POORSTACY into a pop act, where he wanted to stick more closely to his emo roots. This would lead the Breakfast Club project to sound very disjointed, as it had two different clashing styles on it at all times. It got very mixed opinions online, but it did do well enough to get a deluxe version. The album also featured Iann Door and Travis Barker as features. After this, it seems like POORSTACY would depart from Internet Money altogether. He still had his label deal with 10K Projects, but he wasn't working with that management company anymore. He would then self-release a project on SoundCloud called I Don't Rap. He would step away from his usual emo pop type style and just do a straight on rap album. This project had no label push, so it just ended up being a drop in the bucket that was forgotten a couple days later. What fans were really waiting for was his sophomore album, Party at the Cemetery. Stacey would work with Travis Barker once again on the debut single for Party at the Cemetery, known as Hills Have Eyes. Once again, his style would shift into more of an emo rock type of sound. Travis and Stacey would continue to work on a collaborative album known as Hollyweird. Throughout the year of 2020, they would continue to tease the project, as well as dropping several snippets, but after a while, things went silent, and fans were left wondering what had happened to the project until mid-2020 when they announced that it was actually scrapped. Stacey would instead turn his attention back to his second project, Party at the Cemetery, because his new management wasn't so happy with him just fucking around and not dropping music. Top of that, he was way overdue, and 10K Projects was demanding that he drop something soon. So he decided to rework some of the songs that were supposed to appear on Hollyweird and instead put them on Party at the Cemetery. Stacey would drop 5 whole singles before putting this project out, and when it finally dropped, it was a big hit with fans. This album would show another shift in POORSTACY's style. Instead of being another pop punk emo type of album, it was instead more metalcore. This was the type of music that POORSTACY would grow up with, so he really shined when he would do this style. After the release of Party at the Cemetery, Stacey would go on his first headlining tour to promote the album. This was a full-on North American tour where he would meet many of his fans, and a lot of his fans liked him quite a bit when they would see him perform live. He had wonderful vibes, and a lot of these dates he would often give inspirational speeches about a variety of topics. This is where people would get to know him for more than just the music he made. They would actually get to see what he was like as a person, and they really liked what type of person he was. Stacey was starting to be able to escape the role as a rapper and was becoming more of a rock star, opening for many rock bands. After this, Stacey would continue to tour all over the country in multiple different circuits. People were loving his energy, but fans were still waiting for new music to drop. Stacey would take a short break after this, but when he came back, he was ready to announce his next upcoming album. This would be titled Social Suicide. He would eventually rename the project to Neck Romance, but following a series of fuck-ups on his part, eventually he would end up scrapping it altogether. Just like he had done before, he decided to take a lot of the songs off of this project and use them for a new release, but that new release would never come. Things would go quiet for a couple years. A lot of fans were left waiting and wondering, what was POORSTACY up to? When was he going to release a new album, and what was he doing behind the scenes? That was until March of 2023 when a nuclear bomb was dropped onto the Stacey fandom. Claims of abusing his partner would come to light. It turns out that Stacey was first caught abusing his partner all the way back in 2018. He would also flee from the cops after they would attempt to arrest him for this. First time on record that he was caught hitting his girlfriend Nicole was January of 2018. He would then be caught again in June of 2018 when he would run from the cops. Nobody really knew about this at the time as he wasn't yet famous. He would also get in trouble for a couple other minor offenses like driving on a suspended license and not paying the fees for that. Also in 2019, a big blow would be taken by by Stacy when his parents would end up getting divorced. They had remained together throughout his entire childhood, but once he became an adult and moved out of the house, they decided to call it quits. It's unknown how Stacy reacted to this, but the entire time that he was famous, he was actually addicted to painkillers, and it seems around this time Nicole would say that he actually got a lot worse. Eventually he would start taking Percocets, and this is when she would say that it would finally get to the worst degree that it ever got. Everything reached a fever pitch on May 3rd, 2023, when poor Stacy would be arrested on domestic battery charges. Nicole would find evidence that poor Stacy was actually cheating on her the entire time they were together, and she would try to confront him about it, but when he was confronted, he would end up slapping her in the face, dragging her across the floor, and beating her up. During this scuffle, Stacy would become more enraged, attempting to go after his infant son and throwing him at the wall. Nicole was able to catch him before he hit the floor, but it was still pretty close. Then would pick up and throw a hamster cage at the wall with the hamster inside, destroying the entire house in the process. Nicole was able to escape the house and call the police, and within 30 minutes they showed up, but Stacy wouldn't give up right away. He decided to barricade himself inside the house for about an hour's time. He was then charged with battery and child abuse. He was able to post bond at $6,000 and he got a supervised release. He was told that he wasn't allowed to get high during this time and he'd have to check into mental health services for 10 days. A news article was then written about the story, and this is where the Poor Stacy fandom found out what was going on. This is when they would start to dig into his past and find out more information about his prior offenses. Some former collaborators of Stacy would then come out against him, saying that they wrote some of his songs and that he never paid them for it. May 18th, the cops would get involved once again when poor Stacy would take some shrooms and call the cops on himself. It turns out he was having a really bad trip, and he had also called Nicole. Told her that he was afraid he was going to kill himself or that people were coming after him. He was extremely paranoid. When the cops arrived, they took all of his guns and placed him back into custody. He had violated the terms of his release by calling Nicole and also taking drugs. He was actually taken to a psych ward before being admitted back into prison. Nicole would then drop into the Poor Stacy Discord server to explain everything that had went down in the past few days. After this, Stacy basically stays in prison for about a month's time, going to a couple trial hearings but not really getting anywhere in the case. Nicole then posted on her Instagram story wishing well on Stacy and saying that she hopes he gets sober. Stacy then ends up talking to his lawyer and telling him that Nicole actually has her own domestic abuse charge. Finally, Stacy pleads not guilty and is released the second time. As soon as he gets home, he hops on Instagram Live and tries to explain the entire situation from his side.
Just had a child. I have a little baby boy. His name's Damien. Yes, my son is fine. I didn't do anything to my son. I've never touched my son in a negative manner. I've never harmed my son, and this is what breaks me. This is what makes me go psych. This is the stuff that's driving me insane.
All of that went down before I posted the first video on Poor Stacy, and to this day, not much has happened yet. Stacy and Nicole remain broken up. Stacy hasn't gone back to the household, and he's just waiting on trial. He's also staying pretty quiet. The only thing he's really done since is changed his Instagram bio to Most Hated. At the time of recording this video, nothing else has happened on the case, so we're just kind of left waiting to see what happens. It seems many fans are quick to join Stacy's side, while other fans are quick to join Nicole's. I'm not a judge or a jury, so I'm not going to try to convict him one way or the other. You can make your own opinion on this video. The whole point of this is just to try to lay out the information about everything that happened, and if more happens, then I'll make a follow-up video. Overall, just thank you for hearing me out on the whole subject. Thank you for watching. Shout out Knife Gang. Leave a knife emoji in the comments below if you're so inclined. I'm trying to become the most subscribed Twisted World on the entire platform, so if you can subscribe so I can beat this other guy out, I would really appreciate that. But most of all, thanks for watching, guys. Bye. And one more thing, I just want to give a quick shout out to Void It. Without him, I couldn't have made this video. He's a genius researcher, and he's also really good at writing scripts. He actually helped me write most of this script, so shout out to him. And that's all for this time until the story progresses further. So thanks for watching one more time. Bye.